Right, everybody, and we are back with Super Castlevania 4 ran by KenshinTrek. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick on over to our commentator. And Kenshin, good luck and have fun.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Welcome everybody to Super Castlevania 4. My name is D&D Nat21. I'm going to be doing the commentary for KenshinTrek's 80% run. Hope everyone is having a fantastic evening. This is going to be a great run. I'm going to be describing some of the techniques that he's going to be doing, as well as some of the story and some of the little quirks that this game has. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started on the countdown. Timer starts on my go. I'm going to be starting at 5. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So, Super Castlevania 4 is a game presented by Konami that was released in 1991 and was ported over to the United States within the same year. The game is Simon Belmont trying to get to Dracula, once again, as is the general Castlevania theme. But in this version, it is an adventure platform where our goal is to collect the cross, the sub-weapon of preference, and get a triple multiplier in order to be able to stack crosses and do as much damage as bosses. In our community, we know crosses kill bosses. Right now, we have to get a couple of hearts in order to be able to get the combos to drop within the first place. And then after that, deal a certain amount of hits, 10 hits, on either candles or enemies in order for the multipliers to drop. What you're going to notice throughout the run is, well, Simon does power walking, essentially, versus running to his opponent. So what we do in order to get Simon to move a little bit more forward, a little bit faster, is we're going to be doing damage boosts, where you're going to notice that KenshinTrek is going to be jumping either over enemies ever so slightly or almost on them in order to be going slightly faster, and as well as to take advantage of the invincibility frames that comes after taking damage. These invincibility frames are just as described. You don't get hit, you don't get knocked back, so it's sometimes a lot easier to just walk through an enemy than it is to get rid of it. Here we are on the first stage, which is known as the stables or the barns, where the enemy at the very end, the boss, is Rodane, the undead knight. It's going to take a couple of properly timed crosses to overlap them in order to get him into his second phase, where he drops from the back of his undead horse, and hopefully he doesn't jump around. There we see KenshinTrek getting the third cross combo, and hopefully we're going to be able to keep that all the way through the game. There are a couple of other sub-weapons that are in this game, such as the Holy Water, the Stopwatch, the Axe. Those we don't really use. Those are backups. Crosses are the absolute way to go, as they go all the way across the screen and then bounce all the way back, sometimes dealing multiple points of damage within one overlap. So here you're going to see KenshinTrek doing some interesting technique known as a Limp Whip Medusa boost. By Limp Whipping the Medusa, we don't do enough damage to kill it, as a Limp Whip actually does a fraction of a full whip damage. This also changes and pauses the enemy for a brief moment if they are not killed, and allows us to take the Medusa and boost us forward rather than boosting us backward. Here we can see a couple of timing jumps to get those crosses in the right place, an overlap of a whip to do the damage, and then Rodane is destroyed. Level 1 complete. Very well done. One thing to note about this game, as I mentioned before, as it was transferred over from Japan into the Americas, a couple of things were censored. You're going to notice this from throughout the game. Maybe you guys will notice some color variations from what you're used to. Right now, Kenshin is playing on the United States version, and you'll notice that the crosses have been removed from the Japanese version. The blood that you're going to be seeing later on in the game is actually going to be turned to acid, as well as a couple of the statues in the background are actually going to be censored, where they have a little bit more clothes on the stones, essentially, as this was all deemed a little too much for the general audience of the Americas. Moving into stage 2, the swamp. This is where the enemies aren't necessarily skeletons, demons, and gargoyles. No, these are animals. The swamp has kind of a problem with the location of these animals. These crows, these bats, the frogs even, they actually are more of a problem than any of the skeletons that we will see throughout the level. It is a very rhythmic level. It is very smooth with the proper cross catches and throws in order to remove those animals that are in our way. But one small hiccup, and it can very much go awry. The boss of this level, Medusa, rather than being in the middle, rather than being at the end of the stage, is actually in the middle, and is very much a blink and you miss it type boss. It's very easy when she gets on screen for 2 seconds, proper overlap, and she'll just completely disappear. On other categories, such as whip percent or any percent, which are self-imposed challenge subcategories of this speedrun, it becomes a little bit more difficult as she can essentially stand right on top of Simon and cause a lot of issues with health. You'll notice there that there was a dagger that just dropped. Some of the sub-weapons are actually directly in our line of fire, in our path, and can become a problem if we pick them up. So we do our best to avoid a couple of them, such as the dagger there, an axe on stage 6, and a couple of others that can easily be accidentally picked up if we're not paying attention. There it was, a blink and you miss it. Nicely done, Medusa. Very well killed as we move our way onto the river stage. Now, the river stage, with the amount of health that Kenshin has, is good because we're going to take as many boosts as we can to kind of race the tide. The current that moves forward pushes Simon, and at a certain point will eventually push us back. So we're going to try to get to the furthest part of the stage before the river changes currents. And push us, makes us lose time, essentially. You'll notice there, he is now jumping in order to avoid the current and move into the second half of the river stage. Stage 3 is a little bit of a challenge when it comes to health management. Stage 3 is known as the caves. Now, the caves have a little bit of RNG. There's not a lot of RNG inside of the game too much. Some of the spawn locations, such as the purple hands that we saw at the beginning of stage 2, were RNG, as well as you'll see here, the mudmen. Where they're walking, which direction they're walking, is determined based on RNG, and it's not so much of an issue because it's just, you know, left or right. But further on, sometimes you can get a bad pattern of a pair of mudmen that are walking towards each other. We could try our best to avoid this issue with them being a problem in our way by destroying them mid-jump in order to reduce them down in size. By reducing them down in size, oh, there was one of the patterns that we were referring to, but well handled by KenshinTrek. I apologize for that commentator's curse. The Mudmen, when they break down into two, they deal 1 pip less damage. When they're full size, they do 4 pips of damage, which is not great for health management, as we are going to be using a lot of our health in the second part of stage 3, the waterfalls, in order to gain as much vertical space as possible. Well handled and has a fair amount of health in order to take 2 of the boosts, the fuzzy boost, as we like to do here, as well as the eyeball boost later on. And we're going to be using the enemies to kind of bypass a platform instead of going all the way around. Coming up to the ring glitch. Very quickly here, you'll notice KenshinTrek is using a ring in a way that is not really the way the game intended. So in normal game physics, or at least a jump physics, there is an arc that is calculated and you land, well, when you jump, you come down at a certain distance. It's a parabola. But when you are on the ring, you do not have a gravity physics, in a sense, more or less a pendulum physics. And as long as you push away from the center of the ring, you can then use that to bypass a good portion of the level and hop onto a platform. You'll also see this later on in stage 3, and quite possibly in other locations, perhaps even in stage A, where we use the physics of the ring in order to allow us to pass through certain platforms, as well as take advantage of vertical platforms. Nice eyeball boosts in order to bypass a good portion of the level, as I had mentioned, as we move our way over into the last half of stage 3. Orphic Vipers, a twin-headed serpent dragon that kind of causes a little bit of lag due to the in-game frame rule. One thing that I'm going to note is also a slight flashing lights warning for a couple of the bosses later on in the stage. If you have some photosensitivity issues or anything like that, just take care, as there are some bosses that when they're defeated, they flash quite rapidly. And also whenever we pick up a rosary, which is a droppable item in the game, it is quite a bright light. So as we all know, Super Nintendo was very much a flashy console, but you know, just take care if that is something that is of a concern to you. The Orphic Vipers cause a little bit of lag, as there is a frame rule that exists within this game. So if there are too many sprites on the screen, and this is sometimes the case, as Simon's whip is a set of sprites, the killing enemies is a set of sprites, as well as any form of a cross that is on screen, etc., etc., and even some background images, as we're going to notice in stage 4, are all sprites. What happens when we hit a sprite overload? The game slows down, and we want to try to prevent that. So sometimes we're going to avoid killing enemies, and we're going to do our best to try to keep them alive to reduce the frame count. A couple of properly thrown crosses, a couple of good timed whips in order to get the proper overlap damage, and Orphic Vipers is down. Very well done, Kenshin. And we got some hype from chat. This is absolutely a fantastic pace. I just want to thank everybody in the Super Castlevania 4 community. for being here. We are a fantastic community. We're very, very positive. I myself am a runner as well. We are always pushing each other to improving. KenshinTrek especially, we refer to him as the sensei. He is very much there, always providing tips and tricks for new runners, old runners, and this is why it's fantastic he's running this for Game Over Canada today. A fantastic cause. So if you have the opportunity to donate, please do so. We are very much an active community that likes to do things for a good cause. So, you know, if you can, please do. Stage 4 has 2 bosses, known as essentially as the double boss backwards name stage, where there's also a lot of mode 7. Stage 4 they got really creative with. The first boss, which is in the middle, is Puexel, also known as, licks you up backwards. As you'll see, he has quite the tongue that can come out and say hello, but thankfully we were able to remove him very quickly, deal the extra overlap damage, and move on to this rotating room. The second boss, we're going to talk about him in a little bit. Coronaut is a giant rock golem, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there in a second. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Here you're going to notice Kenshin is indeed setting himself up for, the ring type of swag setup. But what are we going to do? Are we going to destroy the Medusas in this room? Because they might knock us into the pit. Are we going to fight them? Are we going to jump around? No. What we're going to do is more than likely just stay in place and crouch. You'll notice that these Medusas are based on Simon's location, and if we stay crouched, they are on a sine wave pattern. So as long as we stay down and stay still, well, they won't touch us. Good portion of of this game is actually very, very calm. It's very, very easy if you stay still and breathe. But you know, well handled. We take a moment here to take a sip of coffee, dry off our hands as the nerves start to get to us, as usually we move into the latter half of the stage. Now, in this part, just gently touching the needles, grazing them. Getting a proper timing on this release allows you to move forward onto the platform. There is a small little brick count, an audio cue that we use in order to be able to determine when we can release safely. This is the Tunnel of Lag, or the Tunnel of Love, as some of the runners like to call it. You'll notice that the red windows in the background are jiggling. They're sprites, and when they break apart, guess what? More sprites! And mode 7 on top of it, slightly nauseating. So what should we do? We should try to avoid killing the enemies to create more sprites. You'll notice that every time that we kill someone with a whip, it slows the game down. We're going to do our best to keep a certain pattern and a certain lag, because this actually affects the spawn locations of the skeletons. Nicely handled, made his way on through without too many surprise spawns. Reacted very well towards the end, noticing that he wasn't going to make the full-on jump to the skeleton and being able to take advantage of the small little window of time that he had in order to push through. Very well done, Kenshin. Here in 4-4, we have the rotating platforms. There is a little fun technique that we can see here sometimes, known as the zip, but it is a very, very fine technique that can sometimes be a fatal one, as you use getting crushed between the rocks to kind of push you out to a different location of the map. But for this time around, much safer to go. Take the patience to push through and walk your way underneath the needles that are a one-hit kill. You touch those needles, and it is game over as we make our way over to Coronaut, the stone golem that protects the entranceway to Dracula's castle. Coronaut, when spelled backwards, is Ton of Rock. As I had mentioned, there is a naming theme in this level. A couple of well-timed crosses. Doing that chunk overlap damage, you'll notice that every single time that you see that little bit of flashing lights, it's counting every single thing that's overlapping. The whip, the crosses, the whole 9 yards. See if we can get a early orb. Very well done, ladies and gentlemen. That is a fantastic technique that is actually somewhat RNG based. It is very hard to control what time you kill Coronaut and how long his death animation takes. Excuse me. He's if you were able to get the proper platform at the right height, sometimes they're in the middle when it goes away, you can get the early orb. So that is a very, very, very good grab. It saves you about 2 or 3 seconds. Wow, that was really well done. Stage 5, the entranceway into Dracula's castle, or the staircase, so to speak. Here is a little bit of a calming stage. It's just back and forth, not a lot of platforming, a little bit of damage boosts. But the issue here is the harpies carrying the fleamen. They are RNG based on spawn and height. Sometimes they are just out of reach, and those fleamen, when they are chasing you, you're trying to move forward, and those fleamen are just creeping up behind you. It is a little bit concerning, depending on if the harpies want to have a bad time with Simon. But if you have good cross timing and good prediction and good reactions, you can easily take care of the harpies that are on screen. They seem to be kind this time around for Kenshin. He handled them very well as he did some proper crosses in order to take care of them when they came on screen, taking advantage of all the boosts that are on the staircase here, avoiding the skeletons, some proper cross throws as he makes his way into stage 6, where the game turns it up a notch. Now, in stage 6, when I say it turns up a notch, it's because of the health. It's because of the damage. It's because of the consistency of the enemies, their locations. At this point, the designers were like, you know what? Let's go ahead and put enemies near holes. That'll kill you instantaneously. Let's do damage cycles, where if you get hit and you didn't kill the enemies before you because you wanted to shortcut them, and you made a mistake, guess what? You're getting knocked around. Also, there's a bunch of chandeliers that give you anxiety because, well, you can go through them either very, very fast, or you can take your time, which is about 5 seconds a cycle, and jump through them slowly. Of course, we're speedrunners. We don't do things slow. Stage 6, you'll notice the Axe Knights are more frequent. They take everything takes an extra pip of damage, like I had mentioned, and here are the anxiety chandeliers. Just for a brief moment, as we're going to watch Kenshin go through this. Whew, okay, so there are 3 cycles to the chandeliers. There is the waiting for all the rotations, each of the chandeliers to do a full cycle. The 2 cycle, which requires either an audio or a very narrow visual cue and also a proper setup, and the 1 cycle, the upper echelon of speed for the chandeliers. The frame window for the 1 cycle is extremely tight and extremely risky, usually saved for PB attempts, and for those who are extremely familiar with the window, it is anxiety-inducing and can sometimes lead to a dangerous fall. Here you're going to notice the ectoplasms on screen. Ooh, that was a little bit scary on the bump back. The axe is right behind you as you go to throw crosses in order to take care of those ectoplasms. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, or if you're off by ever so slightly, you can get bumped back into that axe. And there is indeed a secret room. There are 2 secret rooms that exist, as well as a secret ledge that exists in this game, in order to be able to give you a kind of a bounce back to your rhythm, so to speak. But again, it's a time loss, and we don't want to have to go backwards. Couple of properly timed jumps, landing on the stairs with a neutral jump. One thing that I'd like to describe to everybody very quickly is that in this game, there is something known as Stairs Boss. Stairs Boss is essentially a dead pixel or a location between 2 pixels where if you hit it at a perfect angle, Simon, even if he's pressing up on, well, if you're pressing up on the D-pad, Simon will pass through this dead space in the stairs and you will fall clean through, and there is nothing that you can do about it. No amount of adjustments can help you. If you're on that angle and you're in that location, unfortunately you will fall through, and we don't really like that. It's very scary and can be a run killer. Kenshin now making his way through the place that we lovingly call the Bone Hellway, as we deal with a couple of skeletons, couple of properly timed crosses, and red demon skeletons. One thing to note in this game, if it's red, chances are it does an extra pip of damage, and that's not good for when we're doing health management for boosts. So we don't want to get hit by those demon skeletons, and you're going to see them pop up more and more frequently as we move our way through the stage. The bosses on this stage, the dancers, are a pair of dancers that can, if you don't know the proper pattern, you don't know the timing, are kind of a problem. You can get stuck in a damage cycle and be knocked around. But here we're going to go ahead and have some properly timed crosses again, and make sure that we get the rhythm so that when they're rotating towards us, they follow the crosses and just stack damage. And we're going to try our best to kill the dancers about halfway across the room. Here, you'll notice that the ghouls are, a little bit of a damage boost. The ghouls there have a random spawn and can indeed get in Simon's way, which is a little bit of a problem, but thankfully Kenshin had just enough health to take care of them and be able to survive and get a little bit of a damage boost there, not being knocked onto the ground, saving a bunch of time. Good dancers, well recovered, and we're moving on to stage 7, the library. Now, the library is headed by Sir Grakul, a knight that is encased in glass, ready to defend whenever Simon decides, or Belmont for that matter, decides to show up. Here you're going to notice we're going to take a couple axes to the face, as actually the axes do less damage than bumping into the enemies. You'll notice also as well that the fireballs have a tendency to do less damage, so projectiles are in our favor for this. Here you're going to notice Kenshin jump up onto the stairs. That spawns the axe in a specific location and allows us to walk through the enemies using those invincibility frames that I had mentioned earlier on in the run. We're going to fall through some of these stairs on purpose because, well, it's a vertical level, and we are now approaching a very, very small area known as the book jump. The small area known as the book jump essentially is a small frame window, allowing us to kind of bypass a rotation. It can be risky. It's sometimes best not to go for it. Smart decision, as it really only saves you maybe 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds in the entirety of that rotation, and is better saved for massive PB runs. It's a very, very tight situation when it comes to the book jump, so no stress. Here we're going to actually destroy the candle above the red dog there. You'll notice that sometimes when you're playing this game, the dog has a tendency to jump. Also, he's red, he does more damage. We don't want to bump into him. So what we do is we remove the candle, where in his line of patterning, he jumps if there's a candle above him. Therefore, if we remove the candle, he doesn't jump, and we can take that as an opportunity to avoid any form of extra damage. Here you're going to notice a red caterpillar of sorts, a millipede, centipede, somebody count the legs, but you're never going to see him again. Very unique, a very unique sprite, very unique audio, great boss potential. You don't even have to see him for more than 3 seconds on the stage. It's quite a unique situation there. The statues here doing small amounts of damage, taking the boosts as we are now approaching this kind of the final hallway of sorts that allows us to either whip down the enemies or take advantage of the meat that's there and use the boosts. Well done. Good health moving into Grakul. What you'll notice also is that Kenshin has been throwing crosses at the back wall at the start of every single fight. This is in order to manage the heart count that you see in the top right-hand corner. You'll see that at the very end of the stage, there is a countdown of the time that is remaining, as well as regenerating Simon's health, and if there was hearts, it would count down the hearts as well before the screen fades away. By having 0 hearts on screen, or 0 hearts in inventory, you prevent that countdown timer and allow the fade to black transition to occur much faster. Stage 8, lovingly called Stage Hate among the Super Castlevania 4 community. This is where the game decides, well, let's just have everything in the environment kill you. As I've noted previously, the blood that is normally in the Japanese version is indeed acid, but the acid here isn't too bad. It's not entirely fatal, and actually does a small amount of damage compared to the spikes that you're going to notice around the area, whether they be automatic crushers or fast rotating crushers. Here we're going to use the enemies to our advantage, using these iframes to bypass as many of our opponents as possible, going up the stairs, jumping over the eyeballs, jumping in between the fireballs, and avoiding a damage cycle. If you take any form of damage in the early form of that stage, you run the risk of dying in the damage cycle very easily, getting caught in just a barrage of fireballs and enemies where you have no choice but to stand there and figure out what the heck you're going to do next. Here, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of a small sprite rule. I mentioned it before that there is a limit and it slows down the game, but sometimes we want to abuse that. An example of that is just there where the dragon was on the screen. We picked up the rosary, which is an item that wipes out all of the enemies on the screen. And by moving forward at the same time where all of these sprites are on the screen, we actually despawn the next enemy that is supposed to appear, as there are just too many sprites. The game says, nope, not spawning it. It's an overload. So in order to prevent the crash, the game decides just to not spawn the enemy, which is actually in our favor. We also did this on stage 3, where we despawned a dragon, and we might also, if I remember correctly, see this over on stage 9, where we're going to despawn one on the vertical stage. Some fantastic boosts coming from Kenshin as he is avoiding all of the obstacles in the way, bypassing the crusher, using those iframes, and now we are approaching the boss of stage 8, Frankenstein. Or rather, this monster.
Sorry, do you mind if I got in real quick?
Absolutely, be my guest.
All right, I want to give a huge shout out to Manix for that $30 donation, saying from taking down the Horse King, avoiding turning to stone by Medusa, to shattering the richest of bats and Dracula's closest associates. No one is better equipped for this grueling journey than KenshinTrek and Drunken Draconian. Good luck, my dudes. Thank you again, Manix, for that awesome donation. And guys, we are just under $400 away from that $3,000 goal. Let's get it in.
Absolutely. A quick note about DD: he's going to be running the no candles run, which is a category that he himself has created and is essentially the only one mad enough to try it. It is a very, very excruciating run that can drive anyone insane, and you guys should really take a look at that. It's a feat of incredible talent and skill and work in order to be able to pull that off. So stick around for that, and match that incentive. If there's something that you guys want to go ahead and see, or one goal that you guys want to reach, please do it now. Stage 9 is a beautiful stage. It'll lure you into a false sense of security. Covered in gold, it is Dracula's keep, essentially, where he stores all this, the many riches that he has acquired over his immortal life. The gold, even the skeletons are covered in gold, and also you'll notice the platforms themselves are essentially buckets of gold. They dissolve, they slow the game down, and they're not there when you jump vertically and try to land back on them again. So we're going to try to move forward as much as possible while avoiding all of these skeletons that we have lovingly called Richards. Now, you'll notice that we're going to be trying our best to manage our health without taking too many boosts, because we're going to be using a lot of these iframes where, as you see here, by sticking to the stairs and walking forward, we're going to avoid a lot of these dragons and be able to bypass them rather than fighting them. Swinging over the Scrooge McDuck pit, a gold pit that would sink you down, which doesn't really make any sense because coins are solid. But nonetheless, we avoid it, we swing across it, and we're going to take a couple of the boosts from, ooh, that's a very interesting boost, from the falling rocks there. That is a very, very tight technique to take advantage of. There is some more iframes as Kenshin makes his way through the vertical ascent of the level, coming up to the boss on this stage. I would like to reiterate, by the way, the flashing lights warning. This is the worst boss for this. Zap Bats flashes every single time that he takes a hit, and also when he breaks apart, there is a lot of flashing lights. So what we're going to do for Zap Bats is we're going to try to get 22 hits as fast as possible. This is in order to break them apart at a certain height. Now, when Zap Bats breaks apart into 3 bats, you'll notice that his momentum is based on his vertical positioning as well as his horizontal positioning towards the center of Simon. So we're going to try to get a good position, a good pattern on this in order to get a good break so that the bats come down slowly and we can overlap all of the crosses as well as the whip in order to shred the bat down. If we end up getting a high break, the momentum on the 3 bats is extreme and flies all over the screen and can become very, very chaotic. Perfect height, great break, fantastic Zap Bats. Textbook example of the height that you want to break Zap Bats at. And KenshinTrek is tearing through stage 9, moving on to stage A, the Clockwork Tower. Would it be a Castlevania game without Clockwork Tower? Like, let's be real here. Also, for anyone who is a fan of the music, this game has a fantastic soundtrack. You'll notice a familiar song for those who are familiar with the Castlevania series. Bloody Tears is the theme for Stage A and is a fantastic remix. There is also a remastering of the entire soundtrack for this game that is done by one of the other runners of this in this community, Eagle Eye Jones. We use this for tournaments and things like that. So if you really enjoy this is one of your favorite soundtracks, I highly suggest you go ahead and check out that. You'll notice here that the teeth on the gears, they kind of look a little weird, don't they? They shift a little bit. That's because they're sprites. Oh, yes, again, let's have more sprites. You'll notice that there was no teeth on that gear. That was an overload, a sprite overload that was done on purpose by Kenshin in order to reduce lag later on. He forced the game to lag heavy in the very beginning to lose a little bit of time because he was going to gain a lot of time by having those teeth not be on the screen for the majority of the level. Here we're going to avoid the Medusas, try to get a solid ring here. In order to get good momentum, a double swing, and up into the latter half of Stage A. Now, the boss on the stage is the Mummy. Now, the Mummy is kind of RNG based. The position of where the Mummy is can be favorable to us or not. But first, we're going to go ahead and check out. Ooh, scary little bit of a quick ascent, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and hope that the Mummy has a good position, either on the far left or the far right. We do not want a middle position Mummy, as that can be a little concerning. A middle position Mummy is, depending on whether they choose fireballs, he chooses fireballs or the bandages. The fireballs is a preferable type of attack, as you can't really be knocked any other way other than back with the fireballs. But the bandages, if you're too far backwards and they go over you, they follow a sine wave pattern as well and can knock you into the pit. So we're going to hope for a good pattern so we can get what's known as a one-cycle mummy and try to optimize the stage as much as possible. Ooh, unfortunately, the mummy did not want to play, but that's okay. We can still make work of this as we get bandages, which can be a little scary, a little dangerous. But here we're going to just kind of push forward a little bit, let the sine wave move over top of us, and let the mummy kind of do the walk. No stress there. Fantastic kill from Kenshin. Reducing the amount of hearts and getting that orb. This is a fantastic pace. Let's get some hype in chat. Let's go ahead and support KenshinTrek. Stage B. This is the final stage. This is where we're going to be encountering, essentially, Dracula's generals. But first, before we encounter the boss rush, which is Slagra, Gaibon, and Death itself, we have a secret boss. I mentioned him earlier before. It's Stairs Boss. You see, the game designers were like, you know, it'd be really fun if we had stairs all the way through the last half of Stage B, and also they fall away. So if you end up pressing a minor input wrong or anything like that, you get completely chewed up by the blade saw that is waiting for you below. So not only can you not take your time, you actually have to be rushed, be accurate, be precise, remove the enemies that are in front of you as fast as you can with proper technique, and land on the stairs as cleanly as possible. Neutral jumps are preferred, as when you do a neutral jump, which is no forward or backward, just up and holding up, it's very, very hard for you to get these stairs bosses. There is no way for you to pass through the frame diagonally. Here we're going to attach to each one. You'll notice vertical jumps versus horizontal jumps. Those are the neutral jumps that I had referred to. And just like that, Stairs Boss has been defeated. You have a couple of platforms there. That was a very, very close spiky ceiling there. Depending on the pattern, you can get a very, very quick pattern or a slower pattern. And we don't want to touch those needles. Those are like these Stage 8 crushers where they will kill you instantaneously. And you will also be crushed by any of the lower platforms here if you get stuck on either the left or the right. A couple of skeletons to move forward, to get rid of as we push forward. Collect a little bit of the meat to go in with full health as we approach the first of the Council of Three, Slagra. We lovingly call Slagra, especially Kenshin, the destroyer of dreams, destroyer of runs. Slagra has generally a similar pattern, 2 phases, where there is one with the spear and one without. But in the pattern with the spear, my apologies, there is a way to get a 15% attack charge, essentially, where he charges directly at you and can do damage before you can even move through into the next phase. Generally, this can ruin your positioning, as you need to have proper positioning for Slagra. With all of those iframes that he has, he can only take damage in 1 frame, so you want to have those crosses be directly over him with that 1 frame in order to make sure you do 3 pips of damage. Unfortunately, Slagra was a little aggressive, but Kenshin was able to reposition himself and take advantage of the rebounding crosses to overlap everything and resync his shot up to get those 2 to 3 pips of damage per rotation in the second phase as he moves on to Gaibon. Now, Gaibon is a flying gargoyle with 2 phases. The first phase, he drops rocks from the ceiling, but we're not even going to see that. In the second phase, he uses a bunch of fire damage, which does a little bit more because he turns red, but we're not going to see that either. Cross tosses, it's perfectly timed as it chews away at his health. Well done, KenshinTrek, making short work of the second boss of the Council of Three. Now, Death himself. Some people wonder, why does Death work for Dracula? Some wonder if maybe there was a bet that was lost, or perhaps because Dracula has denied Death himself by living for so long, that Death works for him. Here we're going to try to avoid all of the size that Death throws and try to get that overlapping cross so that he doesn't have to worry about the 2 patterns afterwards. A very clean Death, getting all of that cross damage with the whip overlap, stacking the damage and removing Death before he can even decide what he needs to do. Sometimes he can swoop, sometimes he can throw Death scythes all the way around, which does some of the highest damage in the game, but we don't even need to worry about that if we can remove him before he even becomes a threat. Here, we're going to go ahead and grab onto the stairs. For those who are familiar with the game, there is indeed a secret platform that you can land onto underneath those staircases in order to acquire full health, full hearts, and a triple cross combo if you need it at the time, but we didn't need it. No, Kenshin did not take any damage. He is going straight to Dracula's lair, knocking on his door, and saying, you know what, Belmont's here, get ready. So here, Dracula has 3 phases, the purple fireball phase, a summon elemental fire phase, and also the lightning phase at the very end. In between that, there is a little meatball phase that you'll see here where Dracula is kind and attacks us with a meat orb that can sometimes harass us within the room and provide us with meat if we need it by killing it and hitting it. But sometimes the meat orb can be trolly. It could either spawn off screen or just completely fly out of the room without any health being given to us whatsoever. Here we're going to do our best to overlap these crosses. Dracula kind of has a random spawn where you could he's either on the far right, far left, a random location on the screen, but the 4th spawn is always on top of Simon, so we can kind of use that to manipulate his location. Here we are in the final phase of the screen. Oh, this is a tight fight where the lightning is coming down. Take our time. And this is the final phase. Nicely done. Good fight. Just a very quick note, the timer is going to stop on orb grab. It is just after Dracula fades away here. So, just very quickly, congratulations, KenshinTrek. Very good job. Fantastically run. Orb is going to be appearing in about 2 seconds and is on orb grab. 3, 2, 1, time. Congratulations. Let's give it up for KenshinTrek for Super Castlevania 4, any percent.
GG, that was an amazing run.
That was fantastic. Nicely done. That's Deathless. Honestly, he's, if I'm seeing this correctly, 14 seconds above his PB. That is a great run, a great performance. KenshinTrek, I hand this off to you. You've been muted this whole time because you wanted to focus on the run, but you've definitely earned your time on the stage. So if there's anything you'd like to say, it's your time.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, it was a pleasure for me to do this run. I really had fun with it. I just wanted to thank everybody involved in this event. I am really honored to be part of this event. Yeah, and this Game Over Cancer is for the best of the objectives that they can have. Please remember that they are raising money for the Canadian Cancer Society, which is a really important thing that they can do in order to prevent and to help people having to pass through those difficult times. Yeah, this run was really good. I am really satisfied with it. It was deathless. A couple of minor mistakes, but nothing so serious. Thank you everybody for having me, and yeah, that would be all. Thanks a lot to D&D for the awesome commentary, and a shout out to the great community in the CB speedruns. That would be all. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for that awesome run and the amazing commentary. But yeah, so everybody make sure that you stick around because that's not the only Super Castlevania 4 that we have. We actually have a no candles category, but a Drunken Draconian coming up in just a little bit. Now make sure that you follow our awesome runner, and you know what? We are far from over from this marathon. Get those donations in. Let's raise money for the Canadian Cancer Society. We're going to take a real quick break and we'll be back.